Hello again, Struck Co-op. Today I am bringing you a video about ELEX II, and this is my final impressions after beating the whole story of the game. So think of it as my equivalent of a review, but in my case I don't give out scores, I just provide you what I believe is the pros and the cons of the game after talking about everything there is to talk about, combat, story and so on. So I hope this is a video helpful to some of you out there. Buckle up and let's go. There are many things to talk about when it comes to ELEX II, but I'd like to start with the story. The story is set several years after the events of ELEX. And it starts with this mission, Infected. The creatures that appeared with the invader seems to have infected me with this strange dark substance. I can feel it flowing through my veins. I can feel it changing me. I don't know how long I can resist. I'm in desperate need of relief or even better, a cure. So yes, this means Jax, our protagonist, he has been infected by some sort of invading creatures. I don't want to spoil much, but yeah, there's those invading creatures that destroy the place where he was living, his shack, hut, whatever. And he starts running away from them, but one of them ends up infecting him, and he is gonna start looking for a way to get rid of this infection, to cure himself, which means he needs to go talk to some of his old allies, including the woman he has a child with, Kaya. So I think that's enough of a spoiler. But overall, the story sets us in a quest to try and hopefully find allies from the 5 different factions who are all in war between us, between each other. So there has been some changes compared to ELEX 1. Some people who were in one faction in ELEX 1 are now in another faction. Some of those famous characters from the first game, and we have a son with Kaya. Which I guess is enough of a spoiler, but I'm not gonna say much. And those who might be wondering what happened to the hybrid, well, you're in for a treat. There are some things related to the hybrid. We have to figure out which faction we can get on our side to help us fight the Sky Ents. Sky Ends with D. Those are the creatures. That's what they're called. That's what we're calling them. So I think this is pretty much enough of the story. There's plenty of side stories, plenty of faction missions and companion missions and new companions and so on. So it's just lovely, lovely how many hours the developers have spent into crafting those main side and companion missions. The next thing I always like to talk about in games is the world, how big and vast it is, how beautiful it is and so on. Well, it's a big and vast open world, and you have the total freedom to explore it the way you want. We have our base of operations that very early on we discover, and it's called Bastion, and the Bastion is where I am right now. It's over here. And once you get certain allies to join you, they will come to this base and reside here. You have all sorts of crafting stations, eventually some merchants come here and so on, and even trainers. More about trainers later. But this is just a small part of the world. Obviously you have the fort where the berserkers are, you have the cave or whatever, the grotto where the Morcons are. You also have things like the castle, or whatever it was called, yeah, the castle where the clerics are. And then there's the crater, where you have the outwalls, and then you've got this place here, the depot where you have, I guess it's Ice Fortress, Ice Castle, whatever, the base of operations of the Alps, and those are the faction locations. I think I've talked enough about the world, but the best thing about it is you can explore it freely. And once you beat the story, you get unlimited jetpack, so you can even further explore. See, With that flying mechanic, you can explore so much. And the game ends in such a way where it's most likely that there will be a third part of the series, most likely. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the combat. It is kind of difficult to get used to it, but once you do, it becomes amazing. And considering you have spell casting and other types of skills, you have melee combat, ranged combat, and all sorts of things, and you can fight in the mid-air. Obviously, when you're fighting mid-air, you have to be careful and mindful of certain things. And those things, one of the most important is the fuel of your jetpack. Right now I have unlimited jetpack fuel because I've beaten the game, and it unlocks once you do that. But see, you can, for example, do that. You can grab a shield, one of those special shields that blocks 100% of the damage you receive. You can cast a meteor and let them burn while you're blocking their attacks. Obviously they need to be in front of you for those blocks to work. That's one way of doing it. Or you can do the same with the meteor, but also dodging attacks. And then you have the meteor working for you. And in the meantime you're also blocking attacks. And that could also work. But the combat, it takes a while to get used to it. You have basic attacks and you have charged attacks with your melee weapons. This is the charged one. I'm gonna try and show you, but without the meteors. Let's do that. Oh, and while you're fighting, you can end up rushing into an enemy while you're flying. See how I'm rushing from one enemy? I can rush to another, and to another, and to another. So let's try and show you the charged attack. See how I'm charging up my shot for a heavy attack. You can also block and parry as I showed you. And normally blocking blocks X amount of the damage. There are shields with 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 and 100% damage blocked. Obviously the ones with 100% will take a while to find. And there's, as I mentioned, ranged combat, all sorts of ranged combat like bows. There's things like grenade launchers, there's rocket launchers, there's shotguns, there's just so many types of weapons. I've got some videos of some of the weapons you can find and where to find them. But the best thing about some of the weapons is you can shoot them while you're mid-air. The ones that you cannot shoot mid-air is two-handed weapons like rocket launchers. You saw the grenade launcher doesn't count as two-handed, but the rocket launcher is too heavy and thus. And even bow counts as a two-handed, but not really. When it comes to flying you can still shoot it because it's not that heavy. But if I were to equip a two-handed melee weapon, I won't be able to get the same effects. And overall the combat is one of the best things about the game. It's better than the previous game, but it would take a while to get used to it, let's put it that way. Something that you need to pay attention to is the aim assistant. Aim assist. And this thing you need to pay attention to because yes, it might mess up your combat. I'm used to high access aim assist, but you might want to completely disable it if you're not used to it the way it is. Another thing I would like to talk about is the factions system. There are 5 factions you can join, and you are trying to form a 6th faction and try to get allies for that 6th faction. And based on what faction you join, you would have access to different skills. If you are a cleric, you would have access to those 2 cleric skills. If you are an outlaw, you would have access to crafting chems. Recipes. If you're a Morcon, there's those Morcon skills, and if you're an Alp, here are the skills for the Alps, and if you're a Berserker, those are the skills of the Berserker that you would have access to. Apart from that, there's other things, we'll talk about those later, but each faction has its base of operation, each faction has its armor, faction armor, and it has ranks. And in order to get to the next rank, you need to reach a certain level, like level 20, 30, and so on. Before I became the highest rank of the Berserkers, which is called Paladin, I needed to be level 30 and to have done some quests. And once you get access to different ranks, for example, the Berserkers have Cultivator, Warrior, and then Paladin. And when you're a Paladin, obviously you have access to the best armor. And I'm gonna try and show you the store. Each faction would have an NPC armorer kind of fella that would sell you the different types of armor for that faction. And here I just need to make sure the NPC has woken up, so let's just do that. And now when we go into the armorer, he will sell us all sorts of types of berserker things. And yeah, some of those things won't be available for purchase right away. You would need to make sure you have the right rank. And let me just quickly show you what I'm talking about. See, standard hood, then it goes to good, and then it goes to very good. So there's the standard, then it's the good, and then it's the very good. Very good is the one of a warrior. This one is of a cultivator, and this one is just basic. Basic, cultivator, warrior. And if we want paladin, I've got it in my inventory. So the paladin gear looks like this. This is the one for paladin, see? This one. Let's equip it so you can actually see what I'm talking about. So that's how it is for every faction. They have their own armor, and you can only get the good types and the better and so on if you are a member of the faction. Each faction has their own trainer, and as I mentioned, this is the one for the berserkers, and there's ones for every faction. Apart from that, the faction system is fun, it's nice, and it definitely adds that little bit of diversity. And speaking of skills, trainers, etc., this is the skill trainer system. There are trainers all over the world. Some of them you unlock by doing quests, some of them you unlock right away, and you just talk to the NPC, you ask the NPC to teach you something, or what you can learn from them. And each trainer will teach certain things. This guy teaches personality things. He cannot teach you advocate or trusted. He cannot teach you this or this, but he can teach you those things at the top. And I showed you the faction NPC for the berserkers, this one here. She can teach you the berserker skills, alongside two other things that are not berserker skills but general survival. And overall, if you want to learn certain abilities, if you have found the NPC and know where it is, for example, if I want extra hit points, you can mark it, and then it shows it, highlights it on the map to see where it is. This guy can teach you about health, metabolism, and chemistry. This fellow here, melee combat, heavy weapons, health, stamina. So it will highlight, if you have already found that NPC in the world, it will highlight where the NPC is once you go to abilities and highlight it with F. You earn this thing called LP, learning points, or whatever it's actually called, and each one costs a point, each level. See, LP is skill points, but in order to learn something, it also has a requirement of certain attributes. For example, this one, let's see, this one requires Dex and Constitution, 50 and 40. This one requires Dex and Intelligence, 25, 15. This one at level 4, to learn level 4 would require 60 Dex, 40 Int, and so on. So make sure you have the right stats, and make sure you're at the right teacher, and you have ELEX II, which is the shards, which is the currency, and that you're at that you have the right amount of skill points, which is 1 for each of those. The attribute points system, Cunning, as you can see, increases the crit damage. It also increases chem capacity for outlaws. So it's needed for social skills and to unlock certain abilities. Intelligence increases magic damage. and depending on your faction, it can increase it can increase the mana or psi power from passives that require intelligence to unlock new abilities as well. So yeah, certain things would require it, certain weapons would require it. Dex. Improving Dex increases range damage, and again it unlocks new abilities and items for equipping those. Constitution increases your maximum HP, and it is needed for certain passive unlocks and items, especially melee items. And Strength obviously increases melee damage, and again it's necessary for certain items and abilities and passive skills. So each point you put will, as you can see, you see what happens now. I put a point, boom, it gives me this one. I put another point, boom, it goes here. And every 5 points you would get one of those things. It would be range damage, magic damage, HP, etc. Melee, crit damage. So you need 5 points into it. But the more you invest and the more the base value increases, the more it will cost per point. The more attribute points it will cost per point in here, per point of the stat. At first, 1 attribute point would give you 1 point of the stat, and then you would need 2 attribute points to get 1 point of the stat, be it strength, con, dex, etc. And after you reach 60 base value, I think, after you reach 60 base value, or maybe after you reach 50, I think it was 60. After 60, it changes it to 5 attribute points needed for a single point of the stat in question. Attribute points, a good system, well done, and it doesn't end up being dump everything into this one or that one. And this brings me to talking about gear and itemization. You have 3 armor slots: head armor, body armor, and leg armor. You have offhand and main hand. There is no dual wielding, so you can either go one hand shield or you can go two hand with a ranged weapon or with a melee weapon. And when you equip a spell, it unequips your weapon, and you have this one, which you can decide what types of things you put in each 8 of those slots. And the thing I don't like is that if I press 1, it opens my sword, but then I have to press 6 to get my shield up. Then I press 2 and I switch to a bow. Okay, and then if I press 1 again, I can switch to sword, but then again I have to equip my shield with a separate button, and I have to put my shield in a separate button. This thing's kind of a con for me, but I guess we can get used to it. You also have something called specialization and something called modifier. And specializations and modifiers you would find in various places: shops, chests, and yeah, some of them probably would drop from enemies, but I don't think so, unless it's like special enemy. Mostly it would be from shops, from NPCs like that, or from chests, safes, lockpicks, etc. And those provide a little bit of diversity. Do you go for resistances? Do you go for HP and stamina? For mental energy, strength and dex, just strength, or just dex, or strength and stamina, and so on. The same goes for the specialization, but the specialization also has skills. Like this one is 1 lockpicking and 1 bookworm, which means you don't need to learn it. You can just equip this. This one, HP armor, this one dex and pickpocket, strength and experienced hunter, and things like that. If you've noticed, there's those yellow weapons. Those are unique, legendary, whatever you want to call them, named weapons. Weapons with one of a kind drop. You want to be able to find them more than once, and they all have fixed locations. Some of them you find in certain chests, in certain buildings, and so on. There are various things one can craft in the game. So if you, for example, take those with the minus, if it has a minus, that means it's damaged. And you can see, in most cases, 3 of those will make the next one. And you can see the price, 256 credits for 1 damaged runner blade. But if I take 3 of those and combine them, it makes a runner blade, which costs 1352, which is more than 3 times 256. You can see, boom, I make it, and then the upgraded runner blade is here. But now if we want to make an enhanced runner blade, we would need scrap and iron ore and 2 runner blades. I do have the materials and I can make it, but if you see the price, you would be actually losing up on money. So make sure you don't craft enhanced items unless you really need to use them, because you would lose out on money. And if you just want to make money, make regular items. And in 90% of the cases, making regular items would make you money. There are cases like this, for example, from 100 it goes to 450 instead of 3 times 100. And boom, there are cases like, for example, this damage sphere blade, where it consumes dark elex and consumes 10 blades, where obviously you'll be losing money. But if you want the stronger version of the sword and the strongest, the best one there, then obviously you would want to craft it for the reason of just using it. There's cases like this, the scepter splitter. Again, unless you want to make the enhanced scepter splitter, then it's better to just sell them as they are, otherwise you're losing a lot of materials. This one as well. Whereas with this one, see, 225 times 3 is less than 1250, so you make it and boom, you get this one. But when it comes to enhanced warhammer, it's not worth making it. You can craft ammo. Of course you need to have the right passive skills for crafting certain things. There's also potion crafting, which I'll show you right now. Potion crafting is crucial, and by crafting potions you can increase your stats, your attributes, but you need to kill trolls. So for example, you can see forest troll heart, each one of those can give me 1 strength. And then you can see behemoth heart, 1 intelligence, troll heart regular, 1 cunning, and mountain troll heart is 1 constitution. Apart from that, there's elixir crafting, elex drinks. The small one gives you experience, which I think is a waste to use. And then there's this one, medium elex drinks, give you attribute points. It requires elex and wine, and this one requires elex and moonshine, and it gives you skill points. So at one point in the game you'll probably have plenty of skill points, and you'll be fine. You'll be okay. I don't need those. I need more attribute points. Keep in mind, it's better to make a large elex drink and spend it on attribute points until you max out your attribute points. This one. So don't make medium elex drinks if you haven't learned this and this. Once you have maxed out this and this, and you're like, okay, I no longer need skill points, I need more attribute points, that is when you would need to start crafting the medium elex drinks. You can craft chems, which I haven't unlocked, so I can't show you, but this pretty much is it. And the potions are probably one of the most important things for your growth. As I mentioned, I don't like putting scores on games. 60, 70, 80, 100, whatever percent, 8 out of 10, 6 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. I don't like this. I'm gonna list what I believe is a pro and what I believe is a con for the game. It could be that a pro for me is a con for you and vice versa, but that's how it is. You decide based on what I think is a pro and a con, whether the game ranks high or low in your personal scoring system that you have for games. With the pros, fantasy meets science open world. It's great, it's amazing, it's vast, it's open, and you have a ton of freedom. Some people might be put off by the mixture between fantasy and magic with science and stuff like that, but I personally love the mashup. The explorable map is vast and the scenery is beautiful, and also there's pleasantly disgusting enemies everywhere. I'm trying to show you some of them to just see the vast diversity of different creatures you can find, and yeah, it looks amazing. And keep in mind my graphics card is 1066 GB, so I've lowered a lot of the settings. This is not the most beautiful the game can be. The improved combat system, compared to ELEX at least, it takes a bit to get used to it, but once you do, it actually becomes pretty fluid, especially once you upgrade your jetpack, which is a pro tip from me. Upgrade your jetpacks early if you can. You would enjoy the game much more then. I just love the freedom to explore, as I mentioned. It's amazing, and there's top-notch visual effects, sound effects, and soundtrack. And on top of that, the game is fully voiced over. Fully voiced over means quests, cinematics, even regular NPC dialogues with some B-C tier NPC that's just there to tell you hi and or not, or don't bother me and things like that. Everything is voiced over, from the smallest dialogue to the most important cinematic and story quest. There's also a bit of biodiversity, as I've shown you during the skills and gear segments. There's 5 factions to side with, which in a way affects your build diversity by unlocking access to faction skills and stuff. Choices matter, so what you do keeps adding to this thing, creative or destructive. And if you go destructive, if you end up being the bad guy, it will making the bad choices, or what the game considers bad, you will become destructive. Otherwise you will become creative / constructive if you do good choices. So yeah, there's also a lot of quality of life in the game, but more is always needed. You can never have enough quality of life in a game. But I love the fast travel systems, and I love that I don't need to be to a teleport to teleport and fast travel. I can just straight up say, okay, teleport me there to this fast travel waypoint, checkpoint, whatever, and it immediately teleports me as long as I'm not in combat. And yeah, the day-night cycle system is also pretty amazing, and I love that one. So moving on to cons. I could use some more performance optimization. Sure, I have a 1066 GB 7-year-old GPU, so I'm not expecting to have perfect performance, but I think even people with higher grade machines might experience some performance issues here and there. I also wish there was a respec reallocate skill points kind of system, because people make mistakes, and being able to undo some of the mistakes would be a nice thing. Sure, obviously you can end up catching up on those skill points you've wasted with camps and stuff like that. The same goes for attributes, but it would be nice to have some respect system. And there's occasional minor geodata glitches where one mesh and another mesh are supposed to meet, but you see a hole in between them, a tiny crack of blue sky or whatever underground. But again, I haven't fallen through those cracks, so at least it's not that bad. But yeah, when it comes to quests, some of the quests aren't as fun. Some of the quests aren't as fun as others, or as I would want them to be, but at least it's not that bad, it's not terrible. But sure, I didn't enjoy some quests, whereas others I laughed. Again, this is probably something personal for me, so I can't judge it as much when it comes to that. So yeah, I guess that's it for the pros and cons. There's plenty of food diversity, as I mentioned, plenty of hidden special wood, solid rates of dropping all sorts of things. I felt the game was progressing fast enough. It's a nice open world, giving me enough freedom to do whatever I want, whenever I want. The positives are much more than the negatives for this game for me, and I hope the same remains for you. To get notified when I upload more content like this, or other content for Wooter and not so Wooter games, subscribe to my channel, and you can even hit the bell button to not miss out on notifications. And keep in mind there's also something called memberships on my YouTube channel, which lets you pay a monthly recurring fee, which you can cancel at any time, to get access to special perks such as badges and emotes that have been made by me, as well as supporting my channel obviously. And members can also ask me privately on Discord for one-on-one basic tutorials for Adobe Premiere, Photoshop and After Effects. Thanks for watching all the way until the end, Struck. Keep it cool, and until next time, goodbye.